In the late 2010s, Formula One had a problem. It was getting predictable. It was a parade. The same team winning, the same driver on top. The sport needed a spark. It needed a villain. Then he arrived. He was tough, and you either loved him or hated him.
Yeah, but I mean, it's always if, right? If my mom had balls, she would be my dad. So, yeah.
Max Verstappen wasn't just a new driver. He was the chaos the sport secretly wanted. But this powerhouse wasn't an accident. He wasn't just found. He was designed, forged by a tough father, and made perfect by a system with one goal: to build the perfect winning machine. This is the story of how Red Bull created the villain that F1 needed, and how that creation changed the sport forever. For a few years there, let's be brutally honest, Formula One became the Groundhog Day of motorsport. Each race weekend felt like we'd seen it before, because we had. The Mercedes team, led by Lewis Hamilton, won so much they were basically Thanos in a fire suit. You knew they were going to win, and while you have to respect their power, after a while, you're just watching a purple space god collect trophies. The whole show had the excitement of watching a Roomba clean your floor. You know how it ends. You just have to wait for it to finish. The numbers were just silly. From 2014 to 2020, Mercedes grabbed every single constructors' title. They won over 73% of all races. They didn't just beat the other teams, they made it a boring parade. The podium was as predictable as Pedro Pascal being in the next Hollywood flick.
And sex with men.
What movie you want to see? You want to see a Pedro Pascal movie? You want to see a Pedro Pascal movie?
It was a world away from the sport's golden eras, back when the top drivers were less like PR-trained robots and more like, well, real people. They had flaws, they were petty, and they were glorious. But the sport had become too clean, too polite. It was dying of good manners. To get the world watching again, F1 didn't just need a new hero. It needed a real bad guy. A chaotic, system-breaking villain to wake everyone the hell up. So, where do you find a villain like that? The kind of chaos that can shake a whole sport up. You're not waking this sleeping beauty with love's true kiss.
Weird.
No, you have to build your villain from the ground up. Max Verstappen wasn't some lucky kid who stumbled into a top F1 seat. He wasn't found. He was made. The result of a long-term project with one goal: create the perfect winning machine. The project's lead engineer? His own father, Jos Verstappen, a former F1 driver himself. Jos ran a one-man mental boot camp with a go-kart. This wasn't just a few nice words from the sideline. This was a forge meant to burn away any weakness. There were stories of Jos leaving a young Max at a gas station in Italy after a mistake in a race, just to make a point. This wasn't tough love. It was a plan to build a driver who was mentally bulletproof. Of course, the raw materials were top quality. The other half of the recipe was his mother, Sophie Kompen, a former karting champion, so good she used to beat future F1 stars. The talent was there. It just had to be turned into a weapon. And the final piece of the puzzle was the company. Red Bull's driver program, run by the tough Helmut Marko. He's basically a video game character creator. They took the raw talent from his mother, cranked up the aggression and toughness sliders from his father's training, and just hit start game. by putting him in an F1 car at 17. You take champion DNA, forge it in a fire for a decade, then give it to a tough system that only cares about winning. The result wasn't just another driver, it was a perfectly designed weapon aimed right at the heart of F1. So, what happens when you unleash a weapon like that on a grid of polite, media-trained drivers?
End up wheel to wheel after the start tomorrow.
Now, can we just already stop about this? Because we had so many questions about this.
You get chaos. Glorious, beautiful chaos. Max shows up to F1 at 17, a teenager who looks like he should be asking for the Wi-Fi password, not the keys to a car that hits 220 miles per hour. After just over a season at the junior team, Toro Rosso, Red Bull makes a move so ruthless, it belongs in The Godfather. At least 1 and 2, they promote Max to the main squad and demote their current driver, Daniil Kvyat, mid-season. It was a move so cold, it would make Jada's entanglement talk look like a cozy fireside chat. His very first race for Red Bull, the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix. He's not supposed to win, he's just supposed to settle in. But Max learns things instantly. He qualifies 4th, takes the lead, then holds off a world champion, Kimi Räikkönen, to win the whole damn thing. The paddock's jaw hit the floor so hard, it probably left a crater. It was like a rookie in a video game, skipping the tutorial levels and just beating the final boss on his first try. But he was there to fight. His battle with his teammate, the ever-smiling Daniel Ricciardo, went from a friendly rivalry to a full-blown family feud. It ended with them taking each other out in a blaze of glory in Baku. And then there was Brazil in 2018. After being spun out of a sure win by a backmarker, Esteban Ocon, Max decides to settle things in the FIA garage with a series of very personal, very televised shoves. It was less elite sportsman and more
keep my wife's name out your mouth!
It proved the system worked. Red Bull's monster was fast, aggressive, and making headlines, just as designed. But causing a bit of chaos is one thing. To really change the sport, he had to go after the king. Poking the midfield and annoying your teammate is one thing. To live up to the hype, Red Bull's creation had to do the impossible. He had to slay a king. And in 2021, the king was Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion. So used to winning, you expected him to have a reserve sign on the top step of the podium. He wasn't just a driver, he was an institution. The battle that followed wasn't just a title fight, it was a clash of styles. The king's smooth, smart style versus the monster's raw, wild aggression. At Silverstone, their rivalry turned into a high-speed argument. At over 180 miles per hour, Max gets hit and flies into a barrier with a 51G impact. That's like the force a fighter pilot feels when they eject from a jet. While Max was in the hospital, Lewis won the race and celebrated with his home crowd. The gloves weren't just off, they were set on fire. Then came Monza. They go wheel to wheel again, neither one backing down. Suddenly, Max's Red Bull is climbing over the Mercedes, parked on top of Hamilton's head. It looked less like a Formula One race and more like a monster truck rally gone wrong. Only a safety device called the Halo saved the king from a very bad day. These crashes weren't just accidents. It was the Formula One equivalent of Max saying the quiet part out loud. I will not back down, even if we both end up in a war. For the first time in years, the king had to look in his mirrors and see a guy who did not care about reputations. It all came down to the final race, Abu Dhabi. Hamilton is cruising to a record 8th title. It's over. But remember, this story is about chaos. A late crash, a crazy safety car call, and suddenly it's a one-lap showdown. A plot twist so wild, it felt like it was from an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Max, on fresh tyres, dives past Lewis on the last corner of the last lap of the season to win it all. It was messy. It was controversial. It broke the internet. But it was also the most dramatic, talked about finale in F1 history. The sport didn't just get a new champion. It got the blockbuster ending it needed. The king had been slain, and now the monster had no one left to fight. The king had been slain, and with the old king gone, the new one didn't just take the throne, he made it into a crown of pure dominance. The years that followed weren't a competition, they were a victory tour. In 2022, he wins 15 races, a new record. People thought that was crazy. So, what does he do in 2023? He wins 19 out of 22 races, including 10 in a row. He didn't just break his own record, he smashed it with a sledgehammer. This was the monster, completely off the leash. With his main rival beaten, there was no one left to stop him. This wasn't just a great driver in a good car. This was the scary result of Red Bull's big experiment. They had built a driver whose only setting was destroy. And a funny thing happened. Many of the same people who wanted a new winner suddenly complained that the new winner was winning too much. The sport had traded one kind of predictable for another, even tougher one. It was like the meme of the guy sticking a stick in his own bicycle wheel. The fans wanted chaos. They got it. And then they were shocked at the result. But it proved without a doubt that Red Bull's system had worked. Maybe a little too well. They had shown you could build a champion so perfect, so dominant, that he could almost break the sport itself. So, did Red Bull's monster ruin Formula One with his perfect winning? It's the easy thing to think when you see the same guy on the top step every weekend, but it's also the wrong thing. Look at the sold-out crowds, glowing bright orange with his orange army. Look at the record TV numbers, the millions of new fans who got hooked on F1 because of the drama of his 2021 battle. He was the main character in the real-life TV show that turned F1 from a niche sport into a global sensation. He made the sport feel dangerous again. He made it feel unpredictable. He made people feel something, even if that something was pure rage at their favorite driver getting pushed around. And in the entertainment business, rage sells just as well as love. Maybe even better. Red Bull set out to build a monster to make Formula One interesting. They did such a good job that every other team is now desperately trying to build their own. They didn't just change the game, they created a whole new one. And whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny you're watching.